Alrighty then, here is the bottom of the aeroplane, and you can see I put in off camera these little oleo strut actuators. I'm going to add some more details to the oleo struts because they look kind of silly. They're just little sticks, but I'll show you what I do later. Now we need to add the radiator chin, what I think is the radiator, and it's a couple of parts. So it's that outside part, and then there you can see there's a piece of paper that looks like a radiator, and that's stuck to a piece of cardboard. And then there's a rear section that's cardboard, and you can see that I put the inside, I put a little silver Sharpie just to make sure something wouldn't show through funny. And then I glued that piece on, and that just butts up to the very edge. And then I dropped it. And then if you look carefully, there's two little notch marks, two there on that side and two over here. Not that there were places to cut, but what that's doing is locating where you put that inside bulkhead piece with the radiator front. So that's a cool little deal. I like that. That's very, very helpful. So now all you do is, once that's glued together, which I didn't show because it's very simple, you just try to stick that on. And the fit is actually quite good. One side was tighter than the other, but and you make sure you line those pieces up. That little panel line is where it lines up to be accurate. And again, it's not going to be absolutely perfect unless you're Polish. But what I do is add some glue because it's going to be butt joined again, and you basically put it on, line it up to where it's supposed to go. Again, using that panel line as the main way to line it up, and then what I end up doing is sort of squishing it down, pushing it a little bit harder, probably than you need to. You just line it up. You can't see because my fingers are in the way. Someday I'll learn how to take pictures, take videos. But you can see a little glue is squishing out, which is fine. I'm just making sure it's lined up, taking care, and then sort of giving a little pressure, and it glues really well. But I'll show you, and I've done this several times with these paper models. If there's something that still has a fairly big seam in it, it doesn't look that perfect. I'm just straightening that out because that looks crooked. Um, there's you can do something simple like put on a bunch of that white tacky glue into that seam, and you can see it's just slopped on. And then take a finger or a brush or something and smooth it out. And I take the brush and I licked it a little bit. I put it in some water and just sort of smooth it out a little bit. All that dries clear and doesn't look bad. And when you're done, I don't know what it is. It's bizarre because it dries clear, yet maybe because it's reflecting the colors or something. I mean, look at that gap. That looks like that's bigger than the gap between my teeth. That's a lot. That's the Grand Canyon there. Um, and if you're really good, you probably would figure out how to make it so that you don't have to do this. But I find once you do this and it dries, again, I'll show you. I won't show you. You won't see it immediately, but when it dries and you look at it later, it really doesn't look bad, and it's kind of it's neat because look at how much of white is filled in there, and yet when it's all done, and like I said, and dry, the white disappears. It's just kind of clear, and the trench is still there, but it doesn't look quite that way. So I like it. So the back end is just a part that I folded and rolled in my hand using a back of a paintbrush, that big black paintbrush with a round end on it, and test fit it and kind of jiggle it around, make sure you got it going which side is which. Well, that might make sense. And then I just sort of play with it a few times here. I'm just showing you that it takes a little bit of time to get it just right. You're never going to get it absolutely perfect, but you want it good enough that it goes together and looks relatively smooth. So then you just hold it, add some glue around the edges. And again, this is just a butt joint. There's no little tabs. We'll show you on the gun gondolas. There's all kinds of tabs, and those are actually kind of interesting. They're a strange sequence of events to put them together, but they ultimately worked. but I'm putting glue all around the edges. And if it's a little bit thick in this case, I don't think that matters because again, you can just swipe off the excess with a brush or your finger, and then it does provide a little bit of some sort of gap filling ability. In this case, this fit pretty well. Once I put this down and kind of squish it down, I make sure that everything's touching. I push forward. Um, just put it on just simply like that. It doesn't look too bad. And then you just spend some time cleaning it up. And then I do tuck it and push it and hold it with my fingers and kind of squeeze it together and shove it forward, making sure that it's as good as I can get it. And it's just a lot of playing around. It's almost like molding with clay. It's amazing how the paper sort of, will take a shape if you hold it long enough, because it does get a little bit soft with the glue. But there it is. And that white thing will clear up. But there's the scoop. That changes the whole character of the airplane. It really looks different with that on there. It initially it looks pretty favorable when you compare it like to a zero. And then with that on there, now it looks like it's got a barn door under the nose. But I still find it a rather attractive airplane. I think it's really pretty. So there it is, looking good. Pretty much ready for the next step, which are these underneath gun blisters. Now, sadly, well, that wheel ends up getting in the way of a lot of what I'm trying to show you. But these are the parts. There's the front, the rear, and then that's the center. And what they have is this little doodad. And this is what's going to be like the framework. And there's two sets of tabs on either side, right there and right there, that I have scored and folded already. Because those are going to be glued directly to the bottom of the wing in a registered situation that's really easy to do. And then that's going to form the basis for the whole thing. Here I'm just trying to take the little teeth need to be able to sort of fold forward and down a little bit because there's going to be pieces attaching. So I'm just kind of pre-scoring with the back of an X-Acto along the lines just to make sure that I can kind of push them down later and that it will make sense. When I do this from the back, you'll find when you cut this that the little saw teeth, the little valleys are right at the point where the line is supposed to be. So that's basically where you're going to fold. So I pre-shape these a little bit. It's a little delicate, but it works. And then there's a little white tab formed in there. And you go ahead and squeeze those together with your tweezers. Get them together. That puts it all into the right shape. And then you just make sure that's together. Now those pieces, there's a long one and a short one. If you look carefully, that one's long and the rear one is short. And there's corresponding ones on here. There's a long one and a short one. And the reason I'm saying that is I put the other side on first and I was backwards. So there's the long part. So that's got to flip it around and then put it up there. It makes a difference because of the way those little saw teeth are, how they're going to help attach the front and the rear. So what I do is those white tabs are folded. I go ahead and put glue on one side, and I just put them right onto those little marks. And again, you just kind of set it on there, and then I take tweezers and a knife and knock it out of place. Tweezers and a knife and sort of tweak it around and make sure that it is basically in line where it's supposed to be on the drawn edging. And then you put some on the other side. Once the first side is nice and dry, you don't want to pull it apart. And then you just pull that over and put it on the other side on the marks where it's supposed to go. And again, that wheel gets in our way of looking at stuff in a little while here. So, push that down, get it kind of started. It can be crooked at first, but then before the glue dries, you adjust it. So I just play around with this until it's not hard to do, but just play around with it so that you're sort of coloring in the lines. I go from the inside with my X-Acto blade, or you could use a little screwdriver or a paintbrush, and just make sure you got good adhesion, good contact, because that's going to be the basis for the whole gondola, front and the back and then the middle. So here I am with the front part. I roll that around to make a shape that approximates what you're going to do, and then basically test fit it. We'll put barrels in later out of stretched sprue and a little bit of paper. But here's where the stupid wheel gets in the way. Should have done this. Should have had a better way to. I really thought I had a great camera angle, and then when I looked at it, I had a crummy camera angle. Anyway, put some glue around the teeth, and then put some glue on the bottom part of the front cover there, all the way around. And then you have all the basis for adding this to the front end of the little gondola. And both this and the rear piece actually fit quite well. I was quite pleased how they fit. Believe me, you can't tell, but it's actually fitting really, really well. Golly, I don't have to worry about being a cinematographer anytime soon. The rear piece, fold it and roll it in your hand or against something that you know, to make it into sort of a curl. And then I kind of even it out by just doing some by hand stuff to make a point at the tip. You just don't want to make it crooked, but if you just as is, as a guess, stick it on here and kind of squish it down, look at that. It fits really nice. It's going to fit perfectly. So a little bit of glue, and then some glue on the undersides, of course, of the part, and then we'll pop it on there and squish it down. Again, probably a little more glue than is absolutely necessary, but I find it helps. Now that jumped forward because again my view was really horrible, but all I did was put it on there, and now I'm making sure it's making contact, getting rid of excess glue, making sure it's even, and then it's again making contact with the underside of the wing as best I can. There, I'm getting rid of some excess. But again, if it was really bad, I didn't need to do a little fillet. But if it was, you could work on it. But you can see sometimes there's parts that don't quite keep. And you got to glue them back. Now this is the midsection, which is the hard part. It's got that cut on either side to make a bend, and then I'm putting a little bit of a line on the back so that it will, to help it bend forward. Because of that little dart there, it actually has a little bit of an angle. And will fold down. Now, on the other side, I follow the directions, which they said to put this on directly. But what I'm doing this time, on directly to that frame, what I'm doing this time is gluing those angle parts first. So I used a little bit of white glue, and I ended up also using some super glue. And I formed these pieces first. And if you're building the model, there's just a very slight cant, a slight angle that forms when you put those two together, and that's enough to make it fit really nice. The other one, I did this part on the model in situ, and it was a big mistake. So I would recommend you do these separate. In fact, there's a really great build on the Polish website of the same airplane, and the guy's doing an amazing job. And he put his all together, including the frame, off the airplane, and then stuck it all on, which probably is the best way to do it, rather than what I'm doing is following the directions, at least as I interpret them. So anyway, you got those frames sitting there just waiting for glue. You add glue to all those frames, or I guess you could add them to the part as well. I just thought it'd be neater to put them on the tab part of the frame, and then you just drop this guy on. You make sure it's even, and you do the same old thing. It just slides right on, and again, the fit is exemplary. It's good. And little bits and pieces you can tuck and push and prod, get into a pretty dang good overall shape and position. Again, you're going for very little lines and stuff, but if you look at this Polish site where this airplane's being built, the gondolas look like a single sheet. They don't look like there's hardly any lines in them at all. So mine are amateurish, but they're going to do the job. We're going to put the machine guns in soon. Again, they'll be stretched sprue with a little bit of a paper round barrel at the tip to make them look interesting. But those are cool. There they are. She's armed to the teeth. Looks pretty dang nice. Again, liking this more and more.